Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and it's time for another breakfast chat. And today I'm going to chat with you guys a little bit about body recomposition. And we're going to talk about who can actually do it and why. So I made that video yesterday on Doucette's bullshit, because that's basically what it is. Most of what he's saying these days is, from what I understand. Let's set that aside and let's talk about recomposition and the three factors involved in it. And when we say recomposition, what do we mean? Generally, when we're talking about recomposition, is gaining muscle while losing fat at the same time while staying roughly the same body weight. Now, if you're gaining weight and losing fat, that would still count as a type of recomposition, but you're losing fat on a bulk. And if you're losing weight while still gaining muscle, you're managing to recomposition on a cut. Those are extreme cases, by the way. So what's going to determine if you can recomposition, instead of looking at it as a pass-fail, hey, you can recomp on A versus B, and you can't recomp on B, you need to understand that it's a sliding scale, and at certain points in that scale, it becomes impossible, right? It becomes completely impossible to recomposition, such as really low body fat, or even actually really lean. You don't even have to be ripped. Low body fat in general starts to make it impossible to recomposition. And what we need to consider is these are all scales. It's going to determine how effectively or quickly you can achieve it. And some people say, well, that doesn't matter because, time's going to pass anyways. Yeah, but if you can do in 6 months versus 3 years, get the same results, which one are you going to pick? You're going to do it in 6 months. So the time factor does matter. No one wants to put in 3 years of work to do what their buddy just did in 6 months, okay, who is at the same starting point as them. Nobody wants to do that. It's tedious. So the three factors are going to be how experienced you are at training, how much body fat you have, and how chemically enhanced you are. Because that third one always needs to be a sliding scale too. People come up with that and they have this idea that there's natural and there's enhanced. Well, that's not really accurate either. There are massive degrees of enhancement and difference that are not even close to each other in the effects, right? Usually for most of you guys out there, to the average person who's in the fitness world who's dealing with fake natties, you don't even think a person is on gear till they are abusing very large amounts for several years straight. That's usually where a person has to be before most of the people out there say, hey, I think he might be lying about being natty. Yeah, he's been doing that for 10 years. That guy's been blasting for 10 years. Just 3 years ago, he tripled the amount he was on. And in that 3 years, all of a sudden, now you think he looks like he's not natty. He wasn't natty with 30 pounds less muscle either. So, over to the point. That has degrees involved. All right, body fat. The more fat you have, the more easy recomp is to achieve. The less fat you have, the harder it is to achieve. What do we mean? Someone who is 150 pounds overweight can probably gain muscle while losing 3 pounds a week. Okay, they can be in an extreme deficit. And if they're lifting weights and eating enough protein, they will probably gain muscle at half the speed you skinny guys do when you bulk and you're overeating. Probably about half the rate, if they're that heavy. Okay? All the way to the other extreme of the scale, someone who's 11 or 12% body fat, you think you're going to recomposition? Best of luck to you. 8, 9% body fat? You're not even going to keep the muscle you have if you lose any more body fat, let alone gain any. Those guys are losing muscle every week, unless they are, back over to that chemical enhanced thing, unless they're enhanced. They're losing muscle. You can't even keep the muscle you have when you're losing fat at that point. Recomposition is the opposite of what you're going to see. You're going to lose muscle. You're not gaining anything. It's going down. But 11 to 12, you probably are not going to be able to recomposition anymore. That person is almost guaranteed going to have to gain body weight to put on any muscle. A guy who's maybe 15, 18% body fat, they can recomposition a little easier. Okay, and it's a sliding scale. Someone who's 25% body fat is going to find it easier and faster to recomposition than someone who's 20%. Right? Does this make sense? It's a scale. Level of experience is a scale. A rank novice can recomp really easy. If you are new to lifting, recomposition is a breeze. It is insanely easy. In fact, a lot of people new to lifting, like if you're the skinny fat noob, people say, oh, I'm skinny fat, should I bulk or cut? You should slow bulk. You'll probably lose body fat. If you are truly skinny fat, what do I mean skinny fat? I don't know, an average height guy who weighs 155 but has a belly. All right, the sheer act of gaining muscle and the nutrient partitioning involved if they bulk slow, if they gain weight slower than the rate at which they can put on muscle as a rank novice, they'll lose body fat. And then that person, because if you're 155 pounds as an average height male, you don't eat anyways, you don't have an appetite. So once you put on 15 pounds of muscle, you're going to find it insanely easy to drop 5, 6, 10 pounds of body fat. It's going to be really easy for you because your energy turnover is going to be higher and you still probably don't like to eat. You're not an overeater. Okay, losing body weight's not an issue for you. So when your metabolism goes up, it becomes even easier. That person should just lean bulk. They'll probably recomposition some if they're gaining weight slowly, but they'll be gaining a lot of muscle. But experience level matters, and the more experience you get, the harder recomposition becomes. You've been training hard for 6 months, recomposition is going to be dramatically harder than it was the 6 months before, okay? Because you finished a pretty good amount of your noob gains. 2 years of training, it's going to get harder. 5+ years of training, recomposition without going to the chemical enhanced side, going to be very hard unless you're fat, right? You're 20+% body fat, you might be able to, you can probably recomposition a little bit, okay, a little bit. But a guy with over 5 years of training experience, if you're 15% body weight, you're in that healthy range, recomposition is going to be excessively hard, meaning it's going to be so hard and so slow that it's not worth doing. You would do better to just go ahead and bulk and cut. And people forget that when we're talking about bulking and cutting, you will have a higher size ceiling. Why? Because you build muscle and then you lose a little bit when you cut, but you maintain the muscle memory of it. Someone who tries to stay lean all the time will never reach the same size. In the same person, your upper ceiling for gaining muscle is going to be higher if you bulk and cut, completely natural. You probably will have a 4 or 5 pound higher ceiling of how much muscle you can get onto your frame and keep over time versus the guy who tries to do it staying lean. And I'm talking about if you're doing this for years and years, all right? Then we come to the level of chemical enhancement. It's the same thing, sliding scale. People who are completely clean will find recomposition more difficult than people who go on stuff. But recomposition is dose dependent also. And at a certain point, at a certain level of muscle mass, recomposition starts to become impossible with the amount of stuff that a person was using. If they were using 500 milligrams, they might have been able to recomposition really well until they've put on another 10 pounds of muscle. Then they're not going to recomp on that anymore. In fact, they're going to find it hard to gain muscle. They're going to be back to gaining muscle at natural rates at that point, right? They're going to be gaining muscle at the same rate a natty would while staying on that, okay? Because they've acclimated to it. They've gained the muscle they're going to get from it. Now that they're using is just maintaining what they had already built. It's going to go back to a slow process. So if someone wants to recomp again, they're going to have to up the amount. Recomping is easier on 1,000 milligrams of whatever than it is on 500. And so on and so forth till you start getting into bodybuilder quantities. So you start getting into the amounts where, oh man, that guy, I think he's using, yeah, that guy's probably on 2 grams by the time most people realize it. So that is also a sliding scale. Okay, it's not A or B, it's a range. And recomposition is harder and easier at the different ends of the range, to the point of where it could be insanely easy, all the way to the point of where on some ends of those scales where it is impossible, particularly when those factors start overlapping. You start getting a couple of those things on the same end of the scale, recomposition will become impossible. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.